Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about Professor Pratap Bhanu Mehta's resignation from the Ashoka University. We also take a quick look at BJP's manifesto for the upcoming West Bengal state elections. But first, we talk about Madhya Pradesh's anti-conversion law. It has now been 3 months since Madhya Pradesh passed the Freedom to Religion Act 2021 that aims to keep in check on what the government calls love-jihad, which is an alleged internationally funded campaign to convert Hindu women to Islam. Since the law was passed, there have been 21 cases that have been registered under the law. Now, Indian Express's Iram Siddique accessed police records in all these cases and uncovered the details behind them. And from them emerge patterns that raise serious questions about the intent of the law and how it is being used. In this segment, Iram joins us to talk about these cases. And she first starts by explaining what this new law says and how it came about.
So the idea was to stop religious conversions that are being done by fraudulent means and using marriages. MP already had an existing law which was called the Madhya Pradesh Dharma Swatantra Adhiniyam 1968. This law was already existing, that was also there in place to stop religious conversions. However, since it has been over 4-5 decades, the government felt the need to repeal this old law and bring in a new law which will also prohibit conversion, but with a lot more stringent penalties. And also, if at all there are any loopholes in the existing law, because the way people use different means to get people converted has evolved over the past 4-5 decades. That is the general sense that the government started off with.
She says that according to the government, they had adequate knowledge that there was rampant conversion happening in the state, especially with Christian missionaries allegedly converting the tribal population in the state. This is also the reason why the act was first put in place in 1968. But this new law also came about immediately after the UP government, which also has the BJP in power, had passed a similar law, and when there were talks of other BJP states passing such laws as well. In Madhya Pradesh, the law was passed as an ordinance and it came into effect on the 9th of January. And so far, all the cases registered under the law have either been against those in the Muslim community and those allegedly part of Christian missionaries.
So, 9th January until March 20th, Madhya Pradesh has seen around 21 FIRs registered across various districts, the highest of which I think were in Indore. There were 4 cases in Indore. Of these 21 cases, there are 15 cases which are against the Muslim minorities, wherein a Muslim youth, largely in the age group of 21 to 28, in that age group, they have been booked. And the remaining 6 cases are against people who have been alleged to be Christian missionaries, who have either they were attempting to lure individuals into embracing Christianity by giving up their own religion.
And when talking about the law, Iram says that one thing to note about the law is that unlike the one in UP, the Madhya Pradesh one does not allow a third party to register a case on behalf of the victim.
So UP has that provision where anybody can get offended and get an FIR registered under this particular law alleging conversion. In Madhya Pradesh, it either has to be the victim, the blood relative, the guardian, or the custodian. Any third person will have to first approach the court, get a permission from them, and then only will the police register an FIR.
So in these 21 cases, one thing is that the complaints have mainly been made by women. Though in some cases involving the alleged Christian missionaries, some men have complained as well. But if we look at the cases where Muslim men have been accused, Iram says that most of these cases were initially that of elopement, where a woman eloped with a man, maybe ran away with the guy with the intent of getting married, but for whatever reason came back.
And a day later, sometimes 2 weeks later, the case has been converted into that of a religious conversion case, alleged conversion case, of course, on the complaint of the woman. Now, it is really not clear if the woman did it out of her own will or if there was some pressure. That is only for the courts to decide. But prima facie, they don't seem to be very straight cases. I'll give you an example. There was a woman in Harda district. She was in love with a guy. She eloped with him. She had known him for about 8-9 months. They went to Maharashtra. I spoke to that woman and they lived in Aurangabad. They wanted to get a court marriage done, but they, I think, were facing some trouble with their documents because they were both residents of MP. Also, they required around 25 or thousand rupees to get their marriage registered. So that didn't really work out. They were thrown out of their relative's house, so they had to rent a house. They technically ran out of money. They decided to return to Harda. They came back. The woman went back to her house, and the next day she reached the police station and got a FIR registered alleging conversion. So when I asked if she was forced to convert, so she said, no, he did mention once that you, after marriage, will have to convert to my religion. But when I opposed to it, that topic never came up.
Iram says that this was in sharp contradiction to the statement that she had made to the police, in which she had said that she was also raped and kidnapped. Iram says that most cases are like this. They begin a certain way, but somehow end up as religious conversion cases. She gives an example of another striking case that took place in the city of Rewa. There, a girl went missing and her father went and registered an FIR for a missing persons case.
I think she went missing on 25th December or 26th. By then, the law had not come in. She returned around 17th December to the police station, went to the police station with the guy and gave a statement saying that since my parents were trying to get me married to another guy, I went of my own free will with this man, Ibraz, who was from the same village. The police in their FIR have written all these things, that they counseled the woman and then she was handed over to her family about 2 days later. Now she comes back to the police station a week later with an application saying that she had recorded the earlier statement under pressure and the guy had indeed abducted her and sexually assaulted her and forced her to convert her religion and become a Muslim. And then police, of course, added Section 3 and 5 of the newly passed Freedom to Religion Act, and that guy was booked. Also, the woman went on to say that she was not aware that his name was Ibraz, and instead he told her that he was Yuvraj.
Now, this is also a narrative that the state administration believes to be true. That women, especially college students, end up befriending Muslim men who try to portray themselves as Hindu. And Iram says that this point is common in a lot of FIRs.
Now, in one of the cases, the woman was married to the man for about 5 years and they lived in Bhopal. And she said in her complaint that he identified himself as Raj Prajapati and they got married according to the Hindu customs and they've been living. Then some dispute happened over money. Apparently, the man was asking the woman to give him some 5 odd lakh rupees. She went to the women police station and registered an FIR, and there was an ongoing case. And then they had come to the court premises for a bail hearing. And that's where the two got into conversation. And the woman in her statement said that the man allegedly forced her to adapt Islam and said, only if you convert to Muslim can we go back to being together and things like that. It seems, of course, we can't say what exactly happened and if she was actually led to believe that he was a Hindu and then they got married and have been living for 5 years. And it's only recently she realized that no, he's not, and he asked her to, or rather forced her to convert. But they do seem a little amiss, if one may say so.
So this is how things are in the cases where Muslim men have been accused. But these irregularities are also there in cases where allegedly the Christian missionaries are involved. Iram says that in such cases, even primary school teachers and principals have been booked for alleged conversion.
One such case happened on February 22 in Khajuraho of Chhatarpur district, where a school principal was called Sister Bhagya was alleged by the librarian of the school saying that the sister asked her to convert to Christianity, and only then will she get her salary. And her salary was docked for about 5 months. And when she refused to do so, the sister terminated her. This is generally the FIR. Now, surprisingly, the police registered the FIR despite Sister Bhagya, who's the principal of the school. Even before the FIR was registered, she had written letters to the SDM of the district saying that she has fired or she is taking disciplinary action against the librarian of her school who has been absent and has been a really poor performer. She's an assistant librarian called Ruby Singh. Her service will be terminated, but they're levying false allegations. Sister Bhagya has written letters to the SDM. Then she wrote a letter to the TI of the police station, Khajuraho police station, saying that the services of a certain librarian of the school, Ruby Singh, have been terminated on account of her poor performance and other things and other administrative issues. However, there are rumors that she is trying to get a fake case registered against the sister for conversion, alleged conversion. And yet the police went ahead and registered an FIR against Sister Bhagya. And of course, she went to the Jabalpur High Court for anticipatory bail, where she has been granted temporary relief by the court. And they accepted her argument that this seems to be a false case to be registered out of frustration rather than actual conversion.
So Iram says that in a lot of incidents where such interpersonal relationships are involved, the law is being used to register cases. Plus, she says the other thing that stands out in many cases is that Hindutva outfits in the state are also involved in them.
There is one in Indore where there were 11 people who were booked on the complaint of, I think, 22-year-old woman, and including the woman's parents. Apparently, in her application, she said that my parents took me to this community hall of some sort. They told me that they're taking me to our grandparents' house, but this instead brought me to this community hall, and here people are dancing and they're asking me to embrace Christianity and this and that. Now, police barged into that community hall based on a complaint by the Bajrang Dal. Okay, it was the Bajrang Dal activist who barged inside and started breaking things and then informed the police, and the police came in. And if there was a conversion, nobody apart from that woman gave a statement when the FIR was recorded. Later on, I think the police managed to find one or two more people who said that they were being converted, but there was no material found, or there was no father or a priest there to carry out that kind of conversion. But a case was registered and it's being inquired by the police.
According to the law, a third party can't register the complaint. But it appears that the pressure from such Hindutva outfits has a role in how things play out.
I mean, even the case that was registered in Khargon, where there were two high school kids who were booked for conversion, in that the people who spotted the two men with the two women, members of the Hindu Rakshak Manch, who were just identified as passerbys, who spotted the girl and thought that the two girls were in distress and reached out to them. That's when the girls confessed to them, saying that we've been brought here against our will and these guys are forcing us to convert. So you will find involvement of the right-wing groups directly or indirectly.
She also points out that many videos have surfaced where members of Hindutva outfits like the Bajrang Dal are claiming that they have brought such matters to light and got the police to act against cases of religious conversion. Iram also points out that recently, Milind Parande, the National General Secretary of the VHP, that is the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, in a press conference had said that now that the donation drive for the construction of the Ram Temple is over, the VHP is now going to focus on issues like love-jihad, and thanked the BJP for such anti-conversion laws.
And then he said there is a special dedicated a department, or so to say, a small morcha within the VHP, which is looking into these cases. And in his recent visit to Agar Malwa is a region in Madhya Pradesh, he found that in districts of Jhabua and Alirajpur, these are tribal dominated districts and also extremely backward, there was rampant conversion practices going on by the Christian missionaries, and the VHP have made list of these people who carry out these fraudulent conversions, and they've already named around 56 people and handed over the list to the district administration. When I did check with the district collectors of the 4-5 districts in the region, they said they hadn't received any such list so far. But organizations like VHP and Bajrang Dal are very actively, vigilantly looking out for these cases, and you will find their involvement in more than one ways in the cases that have already been registered.
Now, these cases come under the Crime Against Women department of the state. They are technically supposed to deal with them. So Iram reached out to them. But the department said that while they are supposed to deal with these cases, it has no power to issue guidelines on the kind of cases that are to be registered. The law does not empower them to do so, which is partly the reason why we see such FIRs being registered under the law.
The cases that you see right now some of them are of elopement, some of them are girls who have alleged conversions by the guys who have lived in the same village, stating that they did not know that he was a Muslim or his name was Salman, and they thought his name is Sunny, stuff like that. So it is not possible for people to live in the same village and not know what is the name of that guy, because villages are smaller and usually people know, all right. And this people feel that like I was speaking to this advocate of the Madhya Pradesh High Court called Mr. Syed Sajid Ali, and he said that all that this law has done has it's basically empowered the fundamentalists who are getting these sections added to even the minor and petty cases of fights and kidnappings, and there are cases of elopement which are being made to be larger than what they are, where these cases are being registered, these sections of this particular law are being imposed, which might not be the case.
The law is making the minority Muslim and Christian community in the state feel targeted. When Iram spoke to Maria Stephen, the public relations officer of the Christian community in Madhya Pradesh, who has appealed the government to repeal the law, he had said that many in the community are now even scared of praying inside their homes.
Because there are people of the right-wing groups which are barging in and putting applications to the police station, and the police is booking people for praying inside their own houses, saying that they are converting others. So according to these people who are at the receiving end, the checks and balances put in place in the law are not enough. And this law seems to be misused and empowering a certain section of the society to clearly target the minorities, whether it's the Muslim community or the Christians, because these two communities seems to be at the receiving end from the cases registered so far.
Plus, she says that people are also raising questions that how come only those in the Muslim and the Christian community have been booked under this law, especially when there are also cases of Muslim women being converted to Hinduism. The law is also being challenged in the Madhya Pradesh High Court right now, where at least 3 petitions have been filed. One such petition claims that the law is in direct contravention to the rights that the Constitution guarantees, that of life, liberty, equality, free speech and religion.
And also the other bit was we saw a lot of senior Congress leaders such as Govind Singh and a few other MLAs who have questioned the government, because before any bill is proposed or passed, the government has to justify as to what was the need for bringing in that particular bill or act when it does get approved. So I'm sure that the government would have done some sort of survey to show that the cases of conversions are on the rise. And these Congress leaders had asked the government whether that kind of thing was done. And since Madhya Pradesh already had an existing law that was enforced in 1968, and if that law was felt insufficient, simply amendments could have been brought into that act and a few stringent penalties could have been added to it. There was no need to bring a different act altogether. So somewhere down the line, the whole purpose or the need to bring in this new act seems to be a little misplaced as per the opposition in the state and the general understanding of experts or legal experts feel so that there was no need to have this particular law.
The BJP leaders in the state for a while now have said that the so-called love-jihad cases are on the rise. This includes Madhya Pradesh Home Minister Narottam Mishra. Now, curiously, a month after the law was passed, Mishra, in a press conference, had said that there had been a total of 23 cases registered under the law.
However, it's been 3 months now, and as per police records so far, there have been 21 cases. When the Home Minister took that press conference, there were only about 8, at max, perhaps 10 cases, but it was nowhere close to 23. So the government seems to be using it. They seem to be convinced that there are cases on the rise. However, empirical data does not support that claim so well. But yeah, there is this sense of targeting of the minorities in the state using this pretext of love jihad.
And next we talk about the Ashoka University controversy. The private university in Delhi has been in news after the noted scholar, political scientist and commentator Pratap Bhanu Mehta, who was a professor at the university, resigned from his position. In this segment, Ritika Chopra, who first broke the story, joins us to talk about the matter and the reason why Mehta resigned. She first starts by telling us about the university itself, which over the past 7-8 years has come up as one of the premier universities for undergraduate education in India, largely because of the renowned names that have been part of its faculty.
Ashoka University basically was sort of a novel experiment in the sense that, in a way, is a philanthropic experiment where a lot of people, basic people from the industry and businessmen, have come together to set up a liberal arts university. Liberal arts as a discipline, at least around the time when Ashoka was coming up, wasn't really popular. So it's a new experiment in that area. And given the names associated with it was able names in the sense that the founders, for instance, Sanjeev Bikhchandani of Naukri.com, there's Pramatraj Sinha, who has Harappa Education. There is Ashish Dhawan, who's currently heading Central Square Foundation, but he's a venture capitalist. So it had a decent amount of seed capital. And with that, over the last 7 to 8 years, I think if I'm not wrong, it was around 2012-13 when the founding of this university happened. And in this time, it has managed to attract pretty big names to its faculty. I mean, very recently, Mr. Arvind Subramaniam just resigned, but it managed to get the former chief economic advisor on its faculty. Pratap Bhanu Mehta has been associated right from the beginning. Ram Guha has been associated right from the beginning. Sheldon Pollock has been one of the advisors that's helped the founder set up this university.
Ram Guha, of course, being one of India's most noted historians, and Pollock, the noted scholar at Columbia University. These names, along with its philanthropic origins and it being one of the early liberal arts universities, is what has enabled it to stand out. And Ritika says that even when Pratap Bhanu Mehta, who had earlier been heading the Center for Policy Research, had joined the university as a vice-chancellor, it had been a big deal. This was in 2017, but then 2 years later, he resigned from his position and continued to simply be a professor at the university.
So there was some speculation when that happened in 2019, if I'm not wrong, sometime in July 2019 when they had announced it, and everyone was told in that announcement that he will be stepping down as Vice Chancellor on the 1st of August 2019. And at that point in his statement, Pratap had said that he wanted to focus more on teaching and his academic life, and probably Vice Chancellorship and the responsibilities that come with it probably were distracting him from that.
But he is now in the news because he resigned from his position as a professor last week. It had been Ritika who broke the story.
Our sources had told us at that point that this possibly had something to do with his public stand vis-a-vis the government and its policies. He's been a vocal critic of the Indian government, and he's been a vocal critic of the establishment across the years, irrespective of who's been in power. But we were told that it possibly has to do with his, as I mentioned, public stand with regard to the present government. What happened is that once the story was carried by the Indian Express on the 17th of March, that's the first time that the students and actually a lot of the faculty discovered that he's actually gone. So when we spoke to the students, we were told that the standard practice is to actually send out an email on people stepping down or people leaving the institution, but it didn't happen in this case, which they thought itself was quite surprising, and that they had to find this out from a newspaper, given that he had resigned 2 days ago.
Ritika says that this led to a lot of outrage on the campus, and students started demanding the reasons why he resigned.
But what really happened is that it snowballed into a crisis when another faculty member, Arvind Subramaniam, former chief economic advisor and who's currently who was a professor of economics at Ashoka University, he resigned, citing Pratap Bhanu Mehta's resignation and expressing his disappointment at how the university had handled the situation. He pretty much said that seemed like the university had caved in to external pressure, which eventually led to Pratap's exit.
The student body then put out a statement, and a statement was also put out by the faculty.
And I don't think in the past the faculty has ever, at least at Ashoka, taken a collective stand and made a stand public on an issue. So this possibly was the first time that the faculty took a stand and made that public. And both the students and the teachers demanded answers of the administration that tell us why the resignations happened. Whatever that Mr. Arvind Subramaniam has mentioned in this letter, is there any truth to that? So they wanted clarifications, they wanted answers. Series of meetings, the Vice Chancellor held a meeting with the student government. Eventually the Vice Chancellor had a town hall with all the students on the 18th of March, in which she completely denied it and attributed Pratap Bhanu Mehta's resignation to personal reasons.
But then, Mehta's resignation letter came to light. In his letter, Ritika says, he alluded to the fact that his writing seems to have made him a political liability for the university.
He said that he was pretty much, in as many words, told in his conversation with the founders that his writing was a problem or turning out to be a problem for the institution, and he decided to then resign. All of this eventually has now forced the university administration, the vice chancellor, chancellor, the chairman, the board of trustees, Mr. Ashish Dhawan, all of them to acknowledge and express regret over what happened. And again, while they haven't exactly specified what went wrong or what led to the resignation, they said that there were lapses in the institutional process, and that it needs to be fixed.
They together issued a joint statement, which was also signed by Mehta and Subramanian.
And they, on their part, have said that they still support the vision of Ashoka and that they will be available for advice in future, which way to indicate that there is no rancor, really. So that is what has happened over the last 1 week.
The other thing that Ritika points to is that despite acknowledging that there was external pressure, neither Mehta nor Subramanian or the university have said anything about what this external pressure was. Ritika says that while this entire incident didn't garner any strong reaction from the academic community in India, it very soon caught the attention of the international one.
Because after Mr. Subramaniam's resignation, and when academics across the world noticed this, and also given the brand that has built, it is also a university, it's known as an up-and-coming university in India, which again, Mr. Ram Rajan, who eventually again as a reaction to the two resignations, he also issued a statement in which he said that, Ashoka is an up-and-coming university, kind of like the Harvard of India. I mean, that's what it was being considered as a novel successful experiment in the area of liberal arts. So with Mr. Subramaniam's exit, in which he cited Mr. Mehta's resignation, with that what happened was, aside from the fact that really riled students and teachers on campus, there were academicians across the world who started reacting to this and started criticizing Ashoka for caving in, and the fact that it could not, being a liberal arts university, and the fact that it claims to actually promote freedom of expression, basically academic freedom and expression, that it couldn't fill its basic mandate.
Last week, over 150 academics from international universities including Columbia, Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Oxford and Cambridge came out in support of Mehta. Together, they signed an open letter demanding answers from the university. This entire matter also takes significance considering that the independence of a number of academic institutions in India has come under question, and there have been reports of them being under pressure by the current administration.
So there have been a lot of student protests in India the last 4-5 years over different issues, but essentially protesting the authoritarian ways of the university heads, which they have also indirectly attributed to the government in power. And why these actually protests have also kind of attracted so much attention is because political class, the political leaders, have also kind of jumped in to give their opinions about campus politics. Like the government in power has from time to time made its view known about what they think of campus politics. They've often said that students should study, they shouldn't indulge in politics. That also brought all of these student protests into the spotlight.
And in the end, we take a quick look at what stands out in the manifesto released by the BJP for the upcoming elections in West Bengal. The party released the manifesto yesterday, and in it, it made promises to women, the ST/SC community, and the youth of the state. One of the major highlights of the manifesto was the promise to implement the Citizenship Amendment Act, which is something that the refugee communities in the state have been demanding for some time now. This also includes the Matwa community from Bangladesh, which has a strong presence in 42 constituencies. Along with this, the party also promised financial aid of 10,000 rupees to refugees for the next 5 years, plus monetary aid to Dalit and tribal girls for education. And keeping the other backward classes in mind, the party also promised inclusion under the reserve status to a number of Hindu OBCs. When it came to women, the party has promised free education to girls from KG to PG, 33% reservation for women in government jobs, and free public transportation for women, among other things. For the youth in the state, the BJP has made a big promise of providing jobs to at least one member of each family in Bengal if it comes to power. The party also set to tackle the outsider and anti-Bengali tag by announcing that once voted to power, Bengali will be made mandatory in school education till class 10, and in addition, engineering and medical courses will be made available in Bengali. You were listening to 3 Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.